is capturing the game. Oh no, it is. It is. We're good. Why does it do that? It's weird. Okay. I think we might be just dandy. I think the stream has officially begun with no issues, and I had the correct title at the beginning, which is just awesome. Haas00312, thank you for the follow. Today, as soon as we're done communicating with server, we are going to analyze the narrative of characters in Guilty Gear Strive. Now, this is a part of a series that I want to do, which is games which are not commonly associated with good narrative and figuring out how to talk about them narratively, particularly their Ludo narrative. And now I know everybody hates that word, but I personally love it, and I'm going to talk about it today a lot. There's going to be a lot of discussion on Ludo narrative, not dissonance, because I think Ludo narrative dissonance is a delicate subject that needs far more, how do I want to put this? Far more attention and not grace, a word that's like grace. A word that is similar to grace, a lot more nuance. That's the word I'm looking for. You need to, if you're going to do a stream on Ludo narrative dissonance, you really need to understand how to discuss it without being super fucking annoying, which is a synonym for nuance. So any moment, I'm not going to check it this time. I checked it last time, but any moment my Discord, which you can join by clicking any of the links in the various locations, is going to ping me saying that I have gone live streaming, and I'm not going to check it this time. I refuse. I'm not going to get baited by my own Discord tricking me. So as soon as we're done communicating with server, it's time to start analyzing. Just as soon as we're done. I should have started this like 2.5 hours ago, because then by the time the stream started, I'd be good to go. I guess while this is going, though, did you hear the Discord ping? That's my Discord telling me I went live. It's good stuff. Looks like we're about to get in. Okay, so this is Wanderjahr Games. Wanderjahr, meaning wandering years, is a term that is used in Germany, which I now live in, even though I am an American-born man. But Wanderjahr essentially means journeyman years. And in the journeyman years, for those of you who are unaware, it's the time period, naturally, after your apprenticeship. So your apprenticeship years, right? Your associate years, as it were, or and so the journeyman technically is supposed to be the bachelor years, right? That's the bachelor's degree in terms of trade, and then the master's degree is when you become, a master. However, master's degrees don't make anybody masters of anything now. I don't know if they ever did. I didn't live at that time, nor am I a historian, but I know that they don't now, because what I have a master's degree in is creative fiction writing, and I am by no means a master of that. I'm quite good at it, but I am by no means a master. So that's why hello, Tulangs. So that's why I'm calling this Wanderjahr, because I consider these to be my journeyman years. I moved out here after I graduated from my MFA to be with my wife. Hello, wife. And she's not here. She left to go do something more fun. Maybe this is just on my end, but I think your audio is a little quiet. Thank you so much. Thank you. I don't think I can make myself louder, though, is the unfortunate thing. I think I actually tried this not too long ago. I could maybe move the microphone closer to my mouth, though, and then turn that. So maybe I'm just not eating the mic hard enough. Okay, let's move this. I don't know. Some people are good at geolocation shit, so let's move that back. Hello, this is an unexpected pick. I agree, audio is rather quiet. Shit. Maybe if I turn the game down more? How do I get myself louder? This is a problem I've had before, but I can't really fix it. let's see, audio input capture properties. It's the correct microphone. I can't really alter it in the deeper settings. I know this is is an unexpected pick. It's very strange, but this is part of a series that I'm really going hard on. I really want to talk about narrative games narrative in surprising places, right? Okay, this game's got to be quieter. So we're gonna talk about that today, particularly in the context of fighting games, because fighting games are very, very commonly. Why does that still happen? What is going on? Background is behind game capture. I think it has something to do with Guilty Gear, but I guess I could just turn the background off and then it won't do that. Okay, so how do I make myself louder? That's the question. This is what we need to figure out right now. Properties. That doesn't do anything. Advanced audio properties. Ooh, okay. Audio input capture. I can increase my own gain. That's good. That's good stuff. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to do that. How about now? Am I louder now? I have to be louder now. I increased my gain by like almost 2 decibels. I'm so glad that people are actually here today. Because now I can fix all this shit that I've had problems with. Because when I was listening to it on YouTube, I'm like, yeah, I mean, this sounds good enough. I don't know. I'll just go to 2 decibels, and we'll see if that's good enough. Please let me know, because I would be so happy. You are maybe a little louder. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do dramatic, and then rework from there. Let's go up to like 7. It seems just a tad louder. Just a tad, you say? That's highly unfortunate. Okay. Technically, I should be good up until I hit -6 decibels. And then I'm too loud. So let's just keep cranking and cranking and cranking. Okay, this clicking is annoying. Let's do 30. I can't even do it. Let's do 20. How about 20? It's getting better? Okay. All right. So now I'm at 20 decibels. I might be too loud now, though. Sounds fine on my highest volume setting, but I usually have my volume at half. Yeah, I think that's kind of like a normal thing, right? Like I actually have almost all my volume set to like 1. That's quite the jump. 20 is quite the jump. Yeah, I'm fucking around with gain now, so there's going to be some aberrant sounds in my voice as well. It's normal volume now. Okay, so we're going to keep it here. I turned it down 0.4 decibels because I'm really worried about gain adding a ton of distortion to my voice. But we'll figure it out as we go. Okay, so Guilty Gear. Yes, Guilty Gear. I'm still streaming it. Excellent, cool. Guilty Gear is a fighting game. Now, fighting game, interesting. Fighting game, story, what? Fighting games are famous for their terrible stories. And you would be right. However, there is one specific thing I want to talk about, and I'll get to it in a second. But let's first talk about fighting games as narratives, right? So one cool thing about this particular game is we can go into GG World. Okay, so GG World is this huge. I think this is super cool, but the Guilty Gear, honestly, the lore doesn't make a ton of sense in this. Basically, from what I understand, is like there's an alternative reality where that man is hanging out. The original, and he creates the universal will. There's some anime stuff that happens. So yeah, let's see. Then the birth of the gears, right? Okay, so then we have Asuka, Arya, and Frederick. So Guilty Gear, as far as fighting games go, actually has a pretty robust lore versus other fighting games, which are kind of just like, blow it all up at the end of every game and just go on to the next one and Ryu's back. But like the stories of fighting games are always, they're very strange. It's like, oh, there's a dark and evil demon who has taken control of a corporation, and um, a competition has started to see who can beat him. And then you have a fighting game because all the greatest warriors from planet Earth get together and they have to beat the shit out of each other to figure out who can go on to kill the main bad guy in the story, right? Like M. Bison or I forget the one in Mortal Kombat. I've never been a big NRS fan, NRS games fan. I've Mortal Kombat, Injustice. I've never really liked those games very much. But that's kind of the general narrative of all fighting games is like there's a big bad, all the people get together and they compete to see who can take them on, right? Which I guess if I wanted to think about that narratively, what would that be? I guess it's somewhat of like a battle royale type narrative, right? Which is an offshoot of horror. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about it in those terms. But I'm just thinking. Now my mind's going on like what narrative can that be traced back to? I'm wondering if it really even can. I mean, it does have some form of lineage, right? Like there's sports narratives, right? The teams that get together to fight each other in order to go on to do the successful thing. And there's the so that's one type of narrative, the competition type narrative, which is really has its roots in the hero's journey narrative because it's like a team that's down on its luck. Bad News Bears, Return of the Titans, or Remember the Titans. I mean, Faction War maybe. Yeah, Faction War. Yeah, Faction War definitely works for like a sports type narrative. I'm trying to think of other famous Faction War narratives. I mean, other than like the obvious, like, you know, like World War II movies, but the like other kind of like interesting twists on these types of narratives, right? Like I think sports movies are a great example because sports movies, and then like you go further, like a horse movie, a running fast horse movie, like Seabiscuit, which is it's like a twist on two different genres, right? It's a twist on sports narratives and it's a twist on like animal companionship narratives, right? And so all of these kind of like they all trace their roots back to the hero's journey, just like every narrative does, but they all have these like interesting little twists on them. And so I would say that fighting games, at least in some capacity, kind of fall into this category. Like I think they have a slight root in horror because there's like an innate competition to the death type implication, right? Though fighting games typically are like, I beat you and now you're on the ground. And you're looking up at me while I smile. But but Guilty Gear I think is a little bit different in that the lore is like, whoa, it's very, very, very deep. And so we can go over it a little bit. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know, I think, enough to at least kind of talk about it narratively. It's just super confusing. And honestly, like we can talk about anime narratives at some point and why I struggle with them so deeply, but this is very much in the camp of like of an anime narrative. But yeah, so there's the universal will. The universal will is the entity that the Valentines call Mother. She has attacked humanity on countless occasions, which explains the disregard the Valentines have for human life. Okay, so I'm sure that not one word in that made any sense to you. And then there's an intervention from universal will sent justice on a rampage. We'll talk about justice. So these are three humans, Americans specifically. Guilty Gear is very, very specific about it being Americans. The game is very American, which is weird. But you'll see that soon. So these three characters, they're very important. So there's Frederick, there's Arya, and there's Asuka. Frederick and Arya obviously lovers, and Arya becomes Justice because of the gears, right? And the gears, is there some specific aspect vibe you're referring to? Oh, when you say anime narrative, is it just inspired by Japan? No, what I mean is like the anime structure of narrative. Like I don't get it. Like I really struggle to understand what anime narratives are trying to do, if that makes sense. It might not, but like when I sit down to watch a film or a television show, I know what I'm looking for, and I know what instinctively makes me feel things in the narrative. Right? When I sit down to watch an anime, I don't get it. I don't feel that sense. I think the best way to describe Guilty Gear's narrative is, well, there's a lot. That's a good way. That's a fantastic way to put it. But yeah, so with anime narratives, it's not that I don't like them. I genuinely don't understand them. Like I tried to watch One Piece and I was like, there's 1,000 episodes of this. How? Like genuinely, like how did they do it? Because I can't think of how to make like 700 hours of one character doing like slight variations on the same tasks. You know what I mean? Like that's something that is, it's very, very, very interesting to me. Like I think I read 640 issues or something of Naruto before I was like, I think Sasuke had come back from death like again. And I was like, I can't do it. Nobody dies. Um, I think it's the lack of direction sometimes. They're mostly adapted from mangas, and 90% of mangas don't and will never have an end. Yeah, right. I mean, they can't have an end by design because when they end, fuck, you're no longer making money on them. Um, and so, yeah, that is part of it. That is a problem for sure. That is definitely like that is one of the things that I think leads to me not understanding them. I think the thing that makes this sort of anime narrative so particular is that there's so much focus on verbal exposition. Yes, that's another thing that it really is interesting to me. I struggle with it a lot when I watch anime, especially like interesting little things like tag questions. Like it's really common. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if it's something else, but it's a really common thing to have a tag question in like 60% of the sentences, where it's like the main character goes into a store and it's like, "Hey, what's the big idea, huh? What you doing? Are you're one of those rat boys, aren't you? I bet you're here for a bagel, yeah? Well, the bagels, see, they're right over here. Don't you see them? It's like there's a question at the end of every sentence, and it's a super strange thing in anime, and I don't get it. I think it has something to do with the syncing of the talking, like a Japanese sentence may on average end like it takes longer to say the whole sentence than it does in English or something. I mean, I'm speaking from complete ignorance here, but this is my theory, is that when you're speaking, like a Japanese sentence will take longer by like one thing, by like one little tag question. And so they decided to just drop tag questions in just over and over and over and over. And once I saw that, it was unseeable. I was dead. I couldn't watch them anymore. Because those tag questions drive me crazy in English. I mean, I'll still try and watch them every once in a while in Japanese, but then I run into the same problem. I run into the same problem I always run into, which is like, oh man, I wonder if that character's gonna die. No, they're not gonna die, and it just kind of saps all the tension out of the narrative for me. But anyway, we're not even talking about that today. We're talking about Guilty Gear and fighting games. So ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that there's a lot of history to these characters and there's a lot of lore, which is really cool. But I think that this is maybe a little bit outside the regular purview of a fighting game, right? There's not so much narrative in fighting games. They're very much considered to be Ludo, right? They are Ludo games. They're very little narratological elements of a fighting game. Let's see. I'm never going to be able to watch dubbed anime now. Oh, you'll lose your mind. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's unlike, I mean, it's hard to even watch, like, I really like Miyazaki films, for example, but it's even in those, not to the same extent, but it is in those movies as well. Yeah, so sorry if I ruined that. But it is a very weird, it's a very strange thing about anime that I personally struggle with. But I definitely am not saying that animes are lesser. I'm definitely not saying that they are not like valuable, because I do think that they are valuable narrative, a narrative form. It's just something I don't get. Like in the same way that I don't understand certain types of romantic comedy, for example, where there are certain types of, or sitcom. I think sitcom might be a good example. Sitcoms are very similar to anime in that you kind of know that there's very little stakes in the particular narrative, right? Um, like you could in any given sitcom, you could watch the first 3 episodes of the season and the last the first 3 episodes, the middle 2 episodes, and the last 3 episodes of every season, because the rest of the episodes are complete filler. There's nothing going on in them, and they don't matter. I mean, sitcom is short for situational comedy, right? It is a situation that has been brewed for a particular moment, and the personalities, for some reason, they live in New York, but they always have time to hang out with each other and go to the park, and it's like it's obviously nonsense. But it's fine because it's it's kind of escape fantasy, escape fiction. But I think I just that actually might be it. I just don't think I understand escape fiction. I don't really get it. When I sit down to watch or read or play or some type of narrative, I really like for there to be tangible stakes where I'm convinced that the character could die, even though I know that they're not going to die, right? And for some reason, sitcoms and anime, I struggle. I also read all of Death Note, all of it. And after like the third, actually not all of it, I didn't finish it, but I got very close. But after like the third time, when it was like L knows who he is or whatever, and then they find out, and they're just about to discover, and then they don't. It's just I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. It was like we got to go through another one of these, like resetting the clock. Damn, all of it I dropped midway. Yeah, no, that's not true. I never finished it. Sorry. I thought I had, but I'm pretty sure that I just watched the movie. And then I was like, I finished the manga. Cuz I read the manga. That was like actually the first manga that I was like I'm going to read this manga. And I was, I don't know, 16 or something. It came out forever ago. That being said, there are some very cool mangas and some very cool anime shows. Like Megaloboxing, I thought was pretty cool. I was super happy that it was over in 8 episodes. It was like the best thing ever. I was like, oh, thank God, it's over. I'll never watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, for example. Thank you for the follow, Corvidash. Even though JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is kind of like a fighting game, a beloved fighting game fan anime. Okay, let's look at some characters. Holy shit. So I'm going to go to the dojo. And we're gonna talk a little bit about. Am I still sounding good? Is my audio still okay? Because the game is super fucking loud for me. And because Jacko just came out, we're gonna go through the characters and we're gonna talk a little bit about who they are and how their kits work. I sound good. Hell yes. We're gonna talk about how their kits work. And to talk about some of this stuff, I'm gonna have to talk about fighting games in general. And how fighting games work, but we'll get there. So let's just start with bread and butter, Saul Bad Guy. Saul Bad Guy is Frederick, and for those of you who don't know, in the lore, he is, to be fair, Guilty Gear is just inherently loud. It is incredibly true. Guilty Gear is inherently loud. It's just a loud game. Also, has anybody else noticed this? In almost every Japanese game I play, I have to immediately, like, I can't even put my headphones on. Like, if it's like a Capcom or Bandai Namco or like one of those Japanese games, I just don't even put my headphones on until I've turned the game on, gone to the settings, and turned the volume down to 1, because they're so loud. It's very interesting. And I haven't noticed it as much with American video games. Just wondering if anybody else knows that. Your volume is good. Game audio is real quiet / off. It's not supposed to be really super loud. Although it could be a little bit louder, just because Guilty Gear has very unique. How do I want to put this? Oh, it doesn't seem like it's being captured at all. That's weird. It was capturing just a minute ago. Really? I'm surprised. Properties? Maybe it changed. That would be super strange. Well, it's not really the end of the world if it doesn't capture it. I just don't know why it's not. God. Entschuldigung, as the Southern Germans say. Let's see. Is it capturing now? No. Properties. So Toaster, do you play Guilty Gear? You sound like you might play this here video game. I just haven't met many people who play fighting games. It doesn't seem like a particularly popular genre of game to me. All right, I'm not going to figure out this audio thing. It's not incredibly necessary. You do not. Okay, I was just curious. Do you play fighting games at all? Also, show of hands. Who plays fighting games? Does anybody play fighting games? Or is it just me? My older brother does. He's super into fighting games. Gotcha. I love them. I love fighting games. I would say I would say the fighting games probably are the game if I'm going to sit down and play games, it's like the game that I would just like to play. Yeah, Smash counts. Smash counts as a fighting game. It's not a fighting game I like to play, but it's a fighting game. I guess it depends on how you play it. I guess for some reason people consider 1v1 to be a fighting game and multiple people fighting each other on the screen is a brawling game, but I don't know. I think there's all kinds of weird... There's so many weird little gotchas and... well, it can't be... technically, actually... he actually has some knowledge on the lore, so I may bring up some of the talking points brought up here with him if anything that I may want to check him on. Yeah, for sure. Played fighting games when you were younger. Yeah, poorly defined semantics. You played fighting games when you were younger, you say, Two Links. That's interesting. Okay, I give up on the audio. Sorry. Maybe we'll do it again. Who knows? But anyway, Soul Bad Guy, Kai Kisk. Soul Bad Guy is basically Ryu. Kai Kisk is basically Ken, although in Guilty Gear you kind of invert them, right? So Kai is a little bit more Ryu. He's a little more balanced. He's a little more defensive. Soul is a little bit more aggressive, like Ken. However, in this game, in Guilty Gear, the archetypes don't really work like they do in other fighting games. So like in other fighting games, it's very common to say that these are the Shoto characters, right? The Shoto characters are those which have the basic kits like the DP motion, right? They have the what the hell is it called? Oh my god, it's quarter circle back kick, but I'm forgetting the name of it in Street Fighter terms. Tatsugeki? No, it's not Tatsugeki. Oh my god, how am I forgetting this? This is ridiculous. I am a goddamn professional Guilty Gear streamer. Tatsu. That's right. So Tatsu is like a back input and kick, right? And it usually it transports the character across the screen and does damage, right? The DP motion is like the forward down forward, which does like this type of up in the air attack, right? And then they have Shotos almost always have projectiles, right? So the projectile move, meaning it's a disjointed hitbox that can do damage to a character without the character needing to do anything, right? So that's what a Shoto character is. Let's see. So your typical fighting game characters can usually be categorized into a few different things, right? There's Shotos, there's zoners, there's rushdown, there's brawlers or guerrillas, there's grapplers, there's et cetera, right? And let's see, I mostly avoid online multiplayer games. An adult me doesn't have enough friends who play games in walking distance. Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's why I think that there's been such a push for rollback netcode in fighting games, because rollback netcode kind of solves the problem of needing to play next to people. Because famously, fighting games have had horrifically awful, terrible online experiences. But this game doesn't. It's excellent. It's great. I played my friend in America. I was amazed. I couldn't even play when I was living in Utah. I couldn't even play somebody who lived in like Oregon. And now in this game, I can play somebody who lives in Kansas, and I'm in Germany. What? But yeah. So, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So these are Shoto characters. And we have the broad archetypes, the grappler, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what I think is really interesting is that the designs of the characters is influenced by the way that the character plays, right? And now I'm going to talk a little bit about Ludo Narrative, right? So there's a term called Ludo Narrative, and Ludo means play, narrative means story, right? That's all it means, play story. So all games are narratives, and all narratives are games. There is no two ways about it. They're just on this spectrum of the Ludo narrative. They're on the Ludo narrative spectrum, right? And so let's put narratological narratives on the right side, and let's put Ludo narratives or Ludo on the left side of this spectrum, right? Left and right. So a novel is very far on the far right of the narratological spectrum, right? Very little interaction in a novel. You turn the pages, you read, and you try to guess what the author or the I guess the dungeon master, right? The person who the author who's bringing you into their world, and then they try to drop hints for you to pick up on, like what might happen next, and what's behind the door, and is she gonna get away okay? That kind of thing, right? Those are technically gameplay elements. It's just that there's very little interaction from senses, right? There's very little touch interaction. It's just turning pages. There's very little listening interaction, unless you're listening to like an audiobook or something. And there's very little sensory interaction just in general. It's very much focused on the words on the page, right? Then you have on the far left side, you have the Ludo side of Ludo Narrative. The Ludo side of Ludo Narrative is like football or chess, right? Where the game itself has no innate narrative, right? There is no authored narrative on the part of some guiding hand that is directing what the narrative of the game is, right? So like football is, as a narrative, it's a very interesting one, because there's narratives that are born out of football just by the fact that, like, oh, Tom Brady's 42 years old. Can he get another Super Bowl? Like, that's not the type of narrative I'm talking about. I'm talking about the narrative of football itself, the game itself, right? So in football, the goal is to obviously take the little brown ball and move it to the colored square on the big field of squares, or rectangles, excuse me. And that's the whole goal. That's the entire plan in that whole narrative. However, there's a lot of things that actually go into it, right? So like, what is a quarterback? Our quarterback is like a leader. He's a or she, they, a quarterback. An NFL quarterback. Unfortunately, women can't play in the NFL as of yet. So a quarterback is an NFL quarterback is a guy who he's a leader. He's considered to be the smartest person on the team. He's considered to have the best vision, and he is like somewhat of a secondary coach, right? Like, he's almost a captain of the company. And then you have the receivers who dive deep into enemy territory, and they take great risk to do so, right? The quarterback is very safe, a very, very safe character in the narrative. And the wide receivers are very unsafe characters in the narrative, because they can get just fucking demolished when they get hit after they catch the the MacGuffin. So then, and then you have like running backs, right? Who are the guys who punch through the front lines, right? So, I mean, what we're really describing is a war narrative. To go back to what Tillings was talking about earlier with the whole faction war thing, we're talking about a war narrative where there's these two opposing forces who are fighting over ground. They're fighting over territory. And if one team or if one faction can take all of the territory, then they score, right? And then it resets. Now, if you were to, spread that out a couple 100 miles in either direction, then you would have a front line in a war, right? Where you take ground and you lose ground and you push for ground and you call in reinforcements or replacements or substitutions. And so, yeah, there you go. But anyway, so this was all just to talk about what the Ludo narrative and how it works, right? And that no matter what we're talking about, no matter what type of thing we're talking about, there's a narrative in there, right? There's always a narrative in there. Chess is the same way. Chess is, you have these pawns, they're like foot soldiers, or just in my interpretation, they're like foot soldiers, and then you have the backline units who are much more valuable. And the way that they work is very interesting. Like a horse, a knight character can jump over other characters. They're really good at flanking, right? Because they're cavalry units. And then the rook piece is really good at protecting the king. You can put him behind the walls of the castle. It's called fucking castling. And I mean, I don't even need to say anything else. It's very obviously like a narrative. It's like a historical fiction medieval warfare narrative, right? That's a very interesting comparison. Yeah, and different player roles correspond to different character archetypes. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. They all do, right? And even the goddamn players themselves, like the players themselves are considered to be in the archetype, right? Like when you look at a running back, they look like a goddamn running back. They look like a running back. It's interesting. It's the same thing with with basketball. Not to the same extent. I think basketball doesn't tell as good of a narrative. I think it's a lesser narrative than football is. I think that's part of the reason why football is so beloved, actually, in America. It's because the narrative people just love that narrative. And same goes for soccer. I think soccer tells a really, really great narrative, a really expressive narrative that you can change a lot of, which I think is really interesting. It's very unique, right? Like Brazil has a very expressive narrative to the way they play soccer, and Italy historically has had a very like reserved, hold the line, like incredible defense kind of thing. How does this work with abstract games like Nim, taking stuff from stone piles? Oh, Nim. Yeah, I wish I don't know enough about Nim in order to play it, but I think. Can you do a quick write-up on Nim in the chat while I keep talking about Guilty Gear, and then when you're done with it, like just kind of explain to me how the game works, because I'm interested in. I think I have an idea, but I haven't played it enough to actually know how the game works. But chess is an abstract game, right? Like chess is like the poster child for abstract games. There's no named piece. I mean, they're named, but they're not called like Gerald. And Billy and Sarah. No chess thing comes with a booklet of the lore of chess. You know what I mean? It's an abstract game through and through. So fighting games. So what we're talking about with fighting games is that they don't have very good stories. However, their character designs are amazing. Like often, right? So if we're going to look at Soul versus Kai from a narrative perspective, let's look at their kits and the way they work, right? So, and just their designs in general. So like Soul, for example, is holding a giant lighter that when he flicks it, fire comes out, right? He's holding a huge lighter. Let's see. He punches with this lighter. I'm just going through his moves real quick. And he has a pretty good backdash. He has a great run forward, right? And the way he pushes forward with his head is really interesting. Like he's really running when he's running. Like he is full clip running. Oh, I just realized my face is in the way. Let's switch this around. There we go. So yeah, he's really running when he's running. I'm going to turn off the UI. Display settings. Virtual controller display. Input history, turn off. Damage information, gauge display. Let's just turn it all off. Okay, now we have a nice clean UI. So I'm just looking at the cloud of dirt behind him. It's funny. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to Kai real quick. So Kai, he's much more reserved in the way that he moves, right? He still has a lot of the same moves, right? So like there's his DP. Here's his projectile. His projectile it's the same motion as Soul's is. There's no difference. Other than they just have very different properties, right? And he has a Tatsu just like Soul. It works a little bit differently. But as you can see, so like this is Kai's Tatsu, where he stays pretty close to the ground, and it looks to me a little bit more defensive, versus Soul, who is like fucking crazy heavy metal. Let's fucking go. This is the same motion for a different character, right? It's completely different, even though it's the same thing. Kai also has this. But Kai is he's more pretty. He's more clean, right? Everything about this character is designed to be more clean, even though he has the exact same kit, right? Exact same. And what I think is really interesting about this is that you can give these two characters oh yeah, there's his run too. Like his run, he doesn't put his head nearly as far forward, right? Like he puts his arm like up to his shoulder. I think he's a beautiful design. I think they both are. But they just exist on the same field, but they're playing very differently. And they tell a very different story, right? One's lightning, one's fire. And yeah, they're beautiful. Sorry, I love that animation. Okay, so let's see. Oh dang, I hadn't noticed that his sword does kind of have a look of a lighter to it. Yeah, it's totally a lighter. It's even more obvious in previous Guilty Gear games. Let's see. Nim has many variants, but the most common is you have multiple piles of stones. Two players take turns to remove any number of stones from one pile. The one unable to move because there are no stones left loses. What? Two players take turns to remove any number of stones from one pile. The one unable to move because there are no stones left loses. That's very interesting. I'm assuming this is a very old game. But the lightning's dynamic. What do you mean by dynamic? I mean, this game is unbelievably gorgeous. It's one of the prettiest games I've ever seen. It's amazing. Let's see. Another good thing to note is the similarities between their visual designs. Yeah, right. Their designs are very similar, but they are so variant of each other, right? Like they're both holding swords. They both are kind of wearing like similar outfits. They're both like, and they're like frenemies in the lore, right? And they have very contrasting opinions about how to do basically everything, right? So it's a very interesting thing to look at these two characters. I'm gonna have to think on that Nim thing for a minute too, Lynx. That's actually a really good point. I'm not entirely sure because that game sounds so abstract that I think there's something to do with discovery, maybe something to do with like uncovering, and it's also just kind of a division of resources, right? Where it's like, how many resources are you going to take? How many resources am I going to take? That's all budgeting. That's all part of normal narrative structure. But I'm struggling to trace its like origin, right? But so yeah, I'm going to keep stewing on that while I'm playing. But yeah, and discussing the characters. They both have swords, but Soul's is a beefy monster of a thing, and Kai's is more practical, right? long and a thin blade. They both wear jackets over black shirts. Soul's is dark. Yep, right, exactly. Kai's is loose. Yep. It's like a more effortful version of coloring one character different to get a new design. Yes, absolutely, right? They just did an excellent job of really making each version of the Shoto unique, whereas Ken and Ryu is like blonde and brown, right? Blonde and red, brown and white. Sometimes the narrative is very, very subtle. Again, there's a narrative of the conflict between the actual players. Yeah, absolutely. It's an abstract math game, any two-player game where both players have the same moves and take turns. Some other minor conditions reduced to Nim. Oh yeah, you had me play Nim. That's right. I remember that now. Yeah, I'll have to keep thinking about it. I think that there's something there about resource distribution, and something about sharing. Okay, so that's enough of those two characters. Let's take a look at some other characters. So we know that the DP motion is a defensive tool, right? It's also an offensive tool. It's a versatile tool, right? The DP motion meaning the move that sends the character up in the air. The projectile tool is almost exclusively a defensive tool, right? It's a defensive tool in the sense, I mean, it's a defensive offensive tool in the sense that you're doing damage, but you're doing it from far away, right? It's very safe. And the Tatsu move, the quarter circle back kick, is an offensive move on the whole. It's usually meant to catch by surprise, or it's meant to be used in combos to either end a combo or maybe start a combo if you're Kai. And so how these characters are, according to this game, the definition of balance. Right, they are a balanced character. They have a good amount of defense. They have a good amount of offense. Their kit is rounded out. It usually means that they're a more weak character because they don't excel at any one thing, right? And that's kind of by design, right? They're the milquetoast characters, which is why I hate Ryu with all my heart and I hate Ken with all my heart. I think those characters are the worst. But I love these two. Partially just because I think this game looks so good, but also because I think they just did a really good job of designing the Shoto character to have fun elements to them. Let's look at some other characters. So I'm gonna do, this is the character I play, Mei, mostly because I'm not very good at fighting games and Mei is very easy. And then let's look at, who do we want to look at? Who do you want to look at, Chad? Who do we want to look at? We've got Chip, we've got Milia, we've got Nagoriyuki, we've got Jacko, she just came out today, she's the new character. We've got Anjimito, we've got Leo Whitefang, we've got Faust, and don't worry, we'll talk about Faust regardless of what happens. We may not get to all the characters, but we'll definitely talk about Faust. Axel Lowe, we'll talk about, there's Potemkin. Nago looks cool. Nago is very cool. So we'll go with Nago. Ramlethal Valentine. Giovanna. I'm of course in the way of all the right screen characters. One moment. Can I just move my camera? Just like, let's just go like right up here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I will talk about Faust. Don't you worry, Toaster Shooter. Faust is, I think, one of the coolest characters like ever. I just can't play him. Gold Lewis Dickinson, who's the other character I like to play. Of course, I move my camera like right in the, you know what, here we go. Let's do this one more time. Let's do this one more time. And let's come to the middle. There we go. Okay. Gold Lewis Dickinson, who's the other character I play, because his name is the Security of Absolute Defense, and I think that's hilarious. Then we have Eno. And when you do tackle him, I recommend you check his taunts. I think there's some interesting contrast to discuss there. Ooh, good point. Oh yeah, that's another thing that actually is really important is the music of each character, because every character has their theme song. And in this one, not in some of the other Guilty Gears, but in this one they have lyrics, and the lyrics inform a lot about the character. Daisuke Ishwatari is just the best. Okay, Eno, she's super cool. Hard rock witch. She's a rushdown, power, rushdown, technical. Zato 1, he's also very cool. He's what's considered a summon character or a puppet character. But let's go with Nago, because Two Links was there. Let's see, what's my favorite color of Nago? Let's just go with the base colors. Let's go with the way that Daisuke intended. I'm drinking a beer. Oh, and if anybody's curious, this is what I play fighting games on. It's called a Hitbox. It's like a arcade stick, but it doesn't have the stick. A lot of people give me shit for it, but it's comfy. Okay, so Dice Case 1, Pure Vision, exactly. Okay, so this is May. She's my favorite character. Maybe in any fighting game ever. Not necessarily her design. I think her design's pretty cool, like her giant anchor and shit. I think this is hilarious, that she rides a dolphin. I think that's really funny. She's not my favorite looking character ever. Nago might be one of my favorite looking characters ever. Nago and Faust. I think Nago is utterly gorgeous. Like, just look at that model. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But May is just really, really fun for me to play. And so she's also considered the balance category, because she has similar things, but I think they did a really good job of changing how she works. Let's see. A hitbox. Hilarious if you're not on the receiving end. Yeah. If you are fighting against this isn't very funny. I think this is hilarious. But it's because I'm always the one doing it. So, in Street Fighter, which is kind of the progenitor of the fighting game genre, right? In Street Fighter, you have Ryu, you have Ken. Those are the Shotos. Then you have Guile. Guile is considered a Shoto. I mean, I think he's a Shoto. People don't think he's a Shoto. I kind of think he's a Shoto. In the sense that he has a very similar plan. It's just that he's like a really defensively oriented Shoto, right? And yes, Nago is sick. Guilty Gear just has some really solid character designs all around. Completely. I mean, I don't think there's a bad looking character in Guilty Gear. Even in the older ones. I think they all look super cool. I think that Strive just made it ridiculous. Like they took the designs of fighting game characters and then they said, what if we turned it up to 7,000 and made fighting game characters the coolest looking characters in games? Guile is the charge character. Yes, right. I mean, but so is Urien. And Urien and Guile could not be more different, right? And May is a charge character as well. But this is the thing I think is really interesting. So Guile is a charge character who throws projectiles, and he has the flash kick, right? His flash kick is kind of like the DP. So like here's a good example of a flash kick. That's a flash kick, right? So there's the forward dolphin, and then there's the up dolphin. So that's a flash kick, and that's the sonic boom. If we were Guile, right? So the thing that's historic about Guile is that what he does is he's a very defensive oriented character, because in order to do his moves, you have to hold back. Now, in holding back, you're blocking, right? So it's a natural state of being for Guile to be very defensive. It's just it's innate to how he works, because the game forces you to block in order to do his offense, right? So that's a really interesting way to design, I think, how a character works, because his block motion starting his special move also works with his flash kick, right? So the safest way to block in any given fighting game is to crouch block, what I'm doing right now, right? Because in crouch block, I can't be hit low. I can be hit high, but it's really easy to block a high attack if a high attack is coming in, right? I just stop blocking low. But this is like the safe place to block. You don't walk backward. You can't get hit by mids or lows, so you can only be hit by one thing, right? So they have to jump on you or they have to grab you. But Guile's game plan historically has been, not even historically, Guile's game plan is to throw sonic booms to get you to jump over the sonic booms so that he can then flash kick you. That's what Guile wants to do, always. It's just that's his best mode, is throwing a projectile to force you to jump over it so that he can kick you in the air. May, however, is the Guile slot in this game. Well, kind of. I think that she should be considered the Guile slot, or at least the original consideration for the Guile slot, because she's been in most of the Guilty Gear games. And she's always worked the same. She has the same charge motions as Guile. It's just that they thought, how the hell are we going to differentiate our Guile from their Guile? And what they decided to do was make their Guile, May, an absolute offensive monster. So, um, true, but that's the thing about archetypes in fighting games or otherwise. Two characters in the same archetype could manifest that archetype's characteristics in totally different ways. Absolutely, right? So that's the thing that's really interesting about May. And one of the reasons why I love her so much is because as a character design is because I really like holding back. I'm a naturally defensive person, but May forces me to be offensive in a way that I otherwise wouldn't be, right? So May is like, it's weird how May in her design, it feels really good for me to like jump at the enemy, for example, and start holding block while I'm in the air so that I can do the dolphin. So like, as an example, to do like a combo like this, I'm holding block through almost that entire combo. And that feels very natural for me as a defensive minded human being. But in a way, it's really cool because my defense is being rewarded with offense in a way that I liked more than I liked Guile, right? Because I like how she can move really quickly. She's really really fast. She has a great jump. She's just a great character all around, in my opinion. And I think her design is really cool in that they were just like, well, what if Guile, instead of Guile throwing a sonic boom, what if he jumped on top of his sonic boom and rode it in on the enemy, right? Sorry, I'm just having fun. Okay, no new messages in chat. That's good. Okay, so now let's talk about a little bit more in depth of May and just her animations, right? So she really only has like two moves. She has this dolphin and she has this dolphin, and then she has this grab. And so how she works, and this is how she gets her balance, like the way her balance works, is that she's what's considered a strike throw character, right? So what I am trying to do as May is I'm trying to get you guessing as to what I'm going to do. Am I going to do that, or am I going to do this? Right? That's what I want you to be worried about when I'm playing as May, is whether or not I'm going to grab you, because you can't block grabs. The only way you can get out of a grab is either to jump out of it, be out of its range, or what's called teching a grab, which is where you input a grab at the same time. However, you cannot tech this grab because it's part of her kit. And so that's it. That's basically all she has. She has like her super move where she jumps on an orca. And she has this funny move, which is where she summons a pink whale. But there's not much else to her. She's a very simple character. Her kit is just very simple. Oh yeah, she does have this. That's true. And she has that. But yeah, so the thing that I think is really fun and interesting about her is that she is so zany. Like, she's just such a crazy zany character, and I think they just kind of nailed the way that you would want to play her fits her personality very well. Like the character May herself, her personality is just, it's very good, right? So like she kind of always feels like she's safe. She kind of always feels like she's a very irreverent character. Like she's like, I don't really care. Like I'm just here to meet Johnny. Like I really love Johnny, and where's Johnny? I'm in love with Johnny. Johnny's another character in Guilty Gear. And so it's just kind of how she works, right? It's just a very interesting kit. But anyway, so I've been talking a lot about May. So let's talk about Nago. So Nago is a vampire. I don't know if you knew this, but Nago is a vampire, and he has a giant sword. And I hate this character, except for I love this character. So I think he's like one of the coolest looking characters ever designed in a fighting game. But she's zany in a way that creates a sense of absurdity in her moveset, and that compensates for the fact that she's small. Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. That's a super good way to put it, is that she's very silly, and she's very safe in a lot of the things she does. And it also just really fits with the way that she doesn't take things very seriously in the game or in the story of the game, right? She's very often not a big character in the narrative. She's just kind of like, I'm just doing my thing and fighting people. And yeah, so yeah, let's talk about Nago. So Nago, she's silly to mix her dangerous. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So Nago is a vampire samurai, and he he's very interesting because he actually cannot dash forward. He can dash backward like this, but he can't dash forward. He just kind of just wigs out, right? However, you can do these types of motions. This is like Tatsu, and this is quarter circle back kick, quarter circle forward kick, right? Or if we're doing anime notation, 2-3-6 or 2-1-4 kick. But yeah, so the thing that's really interesting about Nago is that on the outset, he looks like a really defensive character, right? He doesn't have a dash. He doesn't have a run like Mei. He doesn't have a very good jump. I don't even think he has an air dash. No, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have an air dash. He has a super jump. Yeah, he has a super jump, but that's it. And so his movement is very not good, or at least it seems like it's not good on the outset. So I got to turn on one thing real quick. Let's do gauge display. Okay, so so you would think like, oh, he's a zoner, right? He's a zoner because look how big his normals are. His normal moves go like half screen. This is unbelievable. Even his kick is super long. Let's see. Doesn't he have another one? Oh yeah, he has that. And so one would think that this is almost like a Dhalsim type character, but it ends up not actually being true, because the thing that's really interesting is so there's that gauge. I wish I could point it out with my mouse or something, but I can't. There's that little gauge above his super meter. It's filling up with red right now. So that gauge is what's called the blood gauge, and the blood gauge, for everyone else, the most major detail is in the bottom right corner. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point. So the that blood gauge is basically an allotment for special moves that he can do. And the reason why is because his special moves are unbelievably powerful, right? Like this is his dash. That's like crazy. I mean, that's almost full screen, and it's invisible. But if he does it too much, then he does this. He comes into blood rage mode, right? He does half life if he lands a super, but yeah. So you would think that he's a defensive oriented character, and in some ways he is. But what really Nago is an extremely explosive offensive character who needs to be extremely careful with the way he chooses to explode on offense, because if he goes too crazy on offense, he let me explode him real quick. So if he goes into blood rage mode, oh, it's not going to do it because the health bars. 1 second. Gauge settings, normal. Okay. Oops. Okay, let's zoom around the screen real quick. Now he's going to explode. Okay, so now he's losing health in the top right corner. So if he does too many of his special moves, he loses half of his life. And so it's this really interesting balance of character design where he's so powerful that he can't unleash his full power, otherwise it kills him, right? Now there are other ways to mitigate it, and these are the vampire ways to mitigate it. So like let's say I'm at about half, right? That's a little bit more than half. But as you'll notice, if I hit, there's these little blood droplets that come into him, right? And these blood droplets are actually lowering his blood gauge. So as he gets blood, I guess he gets less rage. But there's my favorite one, which is the grab, which is like a full-on vampire bite, right? The vampire bite completely nullifies his blood gauge, right? Like it's gone. So let me do that again. Bam. And gone, right? Completely gone, because he ingested blood, and so he's no longer going into rage. But yeah, it's just a really interesting design for a character who on the outset looks like a zoner, but actually he's just does this for a while. Like he's just kind of keeping you at bay. He's like, go away. My name's Nagaryuki. No, don't. Oh, I killed it. I killed me on accident. There's a local foosball match going on right now. Let's see. Unfortunately, I have to head out for now. I have a class to go to. This is a very interesting discussion so far. Okay, cool. Sorry, Toaster. I didn't get to Faust, but catch it in the VOD. I'll talk about him soon. So the design for the character is go away. My name's Nagoriyuki. I don't like it when you're near me. And then when he's ready, he no worries, I'll catch the VOD. Cool. Yeah, sounds good. When he's ready, it's time to explode on offense, right? That's when you come in and you start doing let's see, what's the one I'm looking for? That's where you start, trying to hit confirm into a super even though I can't do it. Damn it, why can't I do it? Is it oh, I was doing the wrong motion. That makes sense. Okay. So now we can do his super sick animation. God, what a cool fucking character he is. It's just unbelievable. Oh, he's so cool looking. Let's just look at that again. Shing. Fucking Shing. Lifts you up into the air. You wouldn't expect him to have that kind of movement, right? Like, just looking at his character model, he's a giant. He's huge. I mean, he's huge. He's taller than May's anchor, and May's anchor is huge. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else. I'm going to have to go a little bit long today because I didn't end up getting to talk about as many things as I thought I was. But let's move on to different characters. So hopefully that was at least a kind of good explanation of Nago in that, like, his normals are really long range, so it looks like he's a zoner, but all of his special moves are really, really fast and they get you really, really up on the opponent, right? And it all gives you kind of this impression that he is holding back this like innate sense of terrible power that if he uses too much of, then he dies, right? And that's just a very interesting. It's just an incredibly amazing way to design a character, both in terms of gameplay and in terms of narrative, right? Like, talk about translation of narrative elements to gameplay elements, right? Okay. So, let's talk about Zato. I can't play this character. This character is unbelievably technical and hard, but I can do, I think, just enough to kind of show what I'm wanting to talk about. And let's talk about Faust. Okay. The eagle, the inexplicable bald eagle that flies at the beginning of every fight. Okay. So Zato is what is considered a puppet character, or a summoner, depending on who you're talking to. So Zato has let me reset him. So Zato is very slow, right? Like, his forward is quite quick. It's about as fast as May. But his back is very, 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 very slow, right? His jump is pretty good. He jumps quite high. He does have an air dash, although he flies in his air dash. God, he's so cool. Okay. So, and then you'll see this like black that happens a lot, right? When he's doing attacks. God, look at this animation. Now that I'm like looking at it close, like paying really close attention to it, like that is just unbelievable. So it seems like he's like kind of another long range character, right? He has these like really far away normals. Like, I think that hits from there. Yeah, I mean, that's super far away, right? But what makes him extremely unique is that he can do he can do what's called summon Eddie, right? And Eddie is a puppet character that you can control. I wonder how much of it is 2D. Yeah, these are really fluid. Actually, so Arc System, these are 3D models. Arc System Works, the developer of Team Red, a part of Arc System Works, have developed this like unbelievable way of making 3D models look like 2D characters, because it's all 3D models, all of them. I just don't. It's like some kind of voodoo magic that where they made them look like 2D sprites because they're not. So yeah, so Eddie is kind of Zato's like alter ego. He's like his well, I think he's technically like a demon who's inhabited Zato's body, and Zato and Eddie don't like each other, right? Zato is an assassin. Oh, that's his 6P. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. It's a fighting game thing. So, but Eddie, I'm controlling Eddie while I'm controlling Zato. I don't know if you can see that as soon as he recharges, because you have like the Eddie meter in the bottom right, and whenever it's teal, you can resummon the character. I wish I could remember how to summon Eddie without. Let me look. Command list. Summon Eddie. Okay, it's this. God, it's so fucking cool. Okay, so Zeddy, Eddie being Zato's like demon inhabitant, turned Zato into an assassin. But Zato is like a very sad character. He's very unhappy. He's possessed essentially, right? And as I'm moving Zato, I'm also moving Eddie, right? And I think it's just it's an incredible way of designing a character around the mechanics of being two personalities and inhabiting one being, right? Because like Eddie is his shadow, and so he's always kind of connected to Zato in this way. Like he's always connected to Zato in the sense of like this shadow, right? He's always there, and Zato can use him, but it's also that's such a fucking great animation. I love it so much. How that eats projectiles, by the way. So like if somebody's throwing a projectile at Zato, he can eat it, or Eddie can eat it for him. And so there's like this, damn it, grab him. There's like this inherent trade-off to Zato being possessed by Eddie, right? On the one hand, he has this incredibly powerful being that he can like semi-control and can do his bidding for him. But at the same time, Zato is very reliant on Eddie. Like if Zato doesn't have Eddie, Zato is fucked. Like he's dead. He's dead in the water. Like he has the worst moves if he can't get to Eddie, right? How do I? There we go. God, what an animation! Unbelievable. Let's do that again. Do I need to have Eddie out to do that? I know I'm not doing that wrong. Okay. Boom. Ah, and the way that the hands clasp, and then the hands clasp in the world too. See how he clasps his hands, and then the hands unclasp after they become like not a shark. It's fucking crazy. I mean, it's insane. Maybe that's a command grab. It's really hard to describe summoning characters because personally I just don't really understand them. Like I kind of get what they're trying to do. I understand that like when you have two characters versus one, you have an innate advantage if you can control both characters, right? It's just that they're very technical. Like Zato is easily the hardest character to play in Guilty Gear currently in this version of Guilty Gear by far. Like it's not even a competition. He's just astoundingly difficult. Because it's just so hard to keep track of all those things going when you're playing at like match speed, right? That's cool. Puppet characters that I know are more focused on the manipulation aspect rather than a split personality. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Like it's much more about like manipulating this particular being versus like having this innate inherent trade-off to having a being that's inhabited, right? And it shows in the way that the character is designed. And so this is like, I think this is such a good example. I think we've had a couple of really good examples of like how much narrative is being delivered to the audience, not via narrative, right? Like I haven't said one thing that these characters say. I haven't said one thing that they really even do in the story other than like maybe their job, right? Like Zato being an assassin. But for the most part, I really just kind of designed their or described their kit and like their overall game plan. And that's like enough to kind of get a sense of like, okay, so this character is like has a split personality and like he's very technical. He's very hard to control, right? Um, and he has some of the most beautiful animations in the game. Okay, so now let's talk about Faust. Faust is different. Faust is just different in every conceivable fashion. I don't even know what Faust is, to be honest. I don't know what his. I don't know. I don't understand it. Let's see. Puppet characters' advantages are more apparent in 3D fighting games, I feel. They can more effectively play around blind spots. I wonder what their niche is in 2D fighting games. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, partially it's just the overwhelming nature of how they work, right? Like, fighting a really good Zato feels like you don't fight. It feels like you sit there and you hope and wait for him to screw up with Eddie. Because Zato can just, seriously, it feels to me like Zato just kind of like, he just like is hitting buttons and like all of these fucking characters are coming out and you're like, what do I do? Like, when do I hit buttons? Because he's just so oppressive. Like when there's two characters who are trying to beat you up, it's like I don't know what you're doing. And Zato can also put Eddie behind you. So like Eddie's behind you, Zato's in front of you. They're both trying to beat the shit out of you, and you're like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Right. So I think it's like that overwhelming nature. I think that's kind of the plan. But I haven't fought too many good Zatos because he's just that hard to play. But yeah, so we'll talk about Faust now because Faust is, I think, one of the best looking characters in Guilty Gear. But I don't really know exactly what he's trying to do. I mean, he, even on the character profile, it says he is unique, right? Like it doesn't say he's a puppet character. It doesn't say he's rushdown. It doesn't say he's balanced. It doesn't say that he's a grappler, because he's kind of just like a bunch of shit. He's unique. He's really random, and random in more ways than one. So, like for example, he has this. This is his projectile, so he can just throw these out as much as he wants. And every time he does this, he throws out a random object, right? So this time he threw out the trumpet. If he picks up the trumpet, then these little guys run out. This time he threw out Mini Faust, and Mini Faust runs up to the enemy and then beats the shit out of them, kind of. This is an afro, and if you walk on the afro, then your hurt box is increased. So you're trying to get that on the enemy, not on Faust himself, because it's easier to hit the enemy. And then let's see, the bomb. This is like the normal one. The bomb is like pretty self-explanatory. It does damage. Mini Faust, bomb, but it's random. It's random what comes out. So yeah, there's the 100-ton weight that knocks people on the ground. And so what Faust really is he is chaos incarnate. Because like a really good Faust, they'll just do this shit. Like they're just throwing stuff. You don't know what they're doing. There's so much shit on the screen. Everybody's taking damage. You don't know why. You don't know who's who. He has these like kind of interesting, like if you do quarter circle back and then one of the moves, one of the like attack buttons, he turns into like or not, he doesn't turn into, he summons like 3 scarecrows, and then the player, or is it 3 or is it 2? It's 2. But he can come from 3 different places. So he can come from the top, he can come from the side, and then he can come from the other side, right? So so he's all about getting you guessing on like what the hell is even going on. Like, is he throwing projectiles, or is he coming behind me? Is he, if so, how exactly is he approaching, right? And then his general neutral plan is to just keep you away because his moves are really, really long. Like that's super long. I think that hits. Yeah, that hits from. Look how far away that hits. That's insane. And then he also. I'm pretty sure this is full screen. If I can do it. Ooh. Oh yeah, the mix. I forgot about the mix. Oops. I keep forgetting that I selected Zato. What is that? Oh, that's it. Oh, it's not quite full screen, but it's almost full screen. Zack. Yeah, so he's also like a comic relief character because he does like very silly things like what's his super? I think it's oops. I can't remember his super. 1 second. Command list. Faust. Bone crushing excitement. Okay. So this is Faust super. So he sees a thing, he knocks you down, and then he takes a wheelchair and he runs up and he crushes your shin. And it does a shitload of damage. I'll watch it again. And every character has like a different facial expression. But yeah, so he's very interesting because he's a horror character, right? So he's very. I mean, he's based on Dr. Faust. I think the references are pretty obvious. Faust, and he wields this giant scalpel. And from what I understand in the lore of the narrative, Faust is very much like he's a demon with a heart of gold. So like he keeps trying to do good things, but he keeps doing terrible things. And he feels so guilty for the things that he does that he goes on to do more terrible things. Also, I think he's kind of crazy. Like I think he's a little insane. Faust is probably who I'd play if I'm tired of trying to win. Yeah. I mean, how is this just not fun? Like, who knows what could happen if you're just throwing shit? Who knows what could happen? Boom. Also, I got Meteor on that one, so that was fun. Oh yeah, I remember. I wanted to show the other thing about Faust. So, if I can remember it. No. Fucker. Okay. There we go. So this is another way to give the character an afro. Haha. Hilarious. And so it's a lot easier for him to hit him. Because the hitbox is gigantic, right? And then it goes away. But yeah, so Faust is very creepy. He's very, but he's very silly, right? And like, for example, I think May really likes Faust for some reason. Like they get along. They're pretty good buddies, or at least they were. Because May always sees the good in everybody, and she rides dolphins, and everything's hunky dory and happy. And Faust was like convinced that he did something evil when it wasn't true, and now he's totally insane. Is he holding a pike or a giant scalpel? That would be a scalpel, sir. He's holding a giant scalpel. Because he's a surgeon. And at some point in some surgery is what he got framed for being evil. When he actually did the right thing. I can't remember. But yeah, so Faust is a doctor. He's a surgeon. He's crazy. And I don't really know what other character to compare him to because he doesn't work like any other character I've ever seen. Sorry, that's probably super loud. Let's see. Yeah. So he also just has beautiful animations. Like him crawling out of his own skin when he does down S, which is like one of the moves slash. I mean, what the fuck? It's creepy. And like how his body turns like at a full 360 degrees and then he twists his head back. He twists his whole self back. Oh yeah, like that. Oh yeah, and he also has this creepy walk. I forgot about this. This is something that, and this is another good example of like, why did they give him this? Like, I'm not sure, honestly. He has this crouch walk where no other character can crouch walk. None. He's the only one who can do it. And I don't know why. Um, but it's weird and it's cool and it's creepy looking. Um, oh, I didn't realize. Okay. So I think that might be enough about Faust, if for no other reason that we have other characters to talk about, and I've already gone over time by like a lot. Okay, so let's talk about like 2 more characters and then I'll call it a day. Maybe we should look at the other any requests. I think I'm gonna do Potemkin because I think Potemkin's a very interesting character to analyze. And then one other. There's Eno, there's Leo, Anjimito, there's the new girl, Jacko, Milia. With the sharp hair, Milia? Okay. All right. Have I convinced you to get Guilty Gear Strive 2 links? Or actually Anji? Okay, cool. I'll switch over to Anji. Whatever. We'll just do. We'll do that. We'll call these the last 3. We'll call these the last 3 characters. We'll do Anji and Milia. Milia, I won't spend too much time on. Yeah, I'll show you how the fan plays. It's cool. Okay, so Potemkin won't take very long either. So Potemkin's very interesting because he has a backdash, but like Nagoriyuki, he does not have a forward dash, right? He does have a super jump, but he does not have an air dash like the other characters, which is in stark contrast to Milia, who has like 3. I think in other games she has 4, but in this one she can do like 2. She can go like this, and she can air dash forward and back in the same thing, which no other character can do. She's the only one. Anyway, so let's talk about. Yeah, seems like a fun game. You should get it. We can play together because you're on the East Coast. Oh, sorry, maybe I shouldn't have said that. You're on the East Coast of somewhere in the world. So Potemkin is a grappler, and what a grappler is this: he can grab, and then it does a fuckload of damage. So Potemkin very much is in this weird. Grapplers are in a weird spot in terms of their design because they're so dangerous when they're close to you, and their whole plan is to get close to you. And so the entire design philosophy behind their character is to make it really hard for them to get close to you in some cases. So like, for example, Potemkin has a couple of options. I think maybe one too many, because I think Potemkin is an incredibly strong character in this game. Whereas historically, grapplers are not considered very strong characters. So in that, it's okay. Like Guilty Gear wanted to be different. They wanted to have a grappler to be a ridiculously, unbelievably strong character, and so they did. But so Potemkin has a couple of approach options. He can do this, and that's like literally full screen. I mean, it's slow, so you know it's coming, right? And it's very unsafe. So if somebody blocks it, they can punish it. And then he also has he has like ridiculously long normals, right? Like that's gigantic. Bang. But then he has this Mega Fist, which is oh yeah, he also has Slide Head. Slide Head like knocks them on the ground if they're not being careful. So he can get in close, right? So he can like do this. So he's a relatively predictable character in that the things he's trying to do all make sense, right? Like everything is very clear. He can do this because he's trying to knock you down. Why is he trying to knock you down? Well, because he wants to get close, right? Why does he want to get close? Well, because of this. That's his whole plan. That's all he wants to do is this, right? Let's see. What is that other move? Bat. Garuda. Garuda Impact is a bullshit move. It is bullshit. because you can't block this. I mean, you can, but you can't do anything. So like if you block it, you get put into a stagger state, and then he can kind of just walk up to you. It's so annoying. He can also like do, let's see, I think it might have to hit. Oh, he can't cancel it. Oh, I didn't know that. That's actually nice. But yeah, so for some reason, grapplers always have long arms too. I'm not entirely sure why that is. But he has super long arms, obviously. And he also is just, yeah, like I said, I mean, he's kind of a simple character to explain. Like he's what's, I think he's considered like a battle fortress or something, because his defense is really good, right? Like he has very good defense. He has really fast, really long range buttons that keep people away from him until he's ready to do some bullshit, right? And you have to be careful whenever you're near a grappler, because they can do this. And so it's a really weird thing about grapplers, where they're like this push and pull character of like, I need to do damage to them, but I need to stay this far away so that they can't grab me, because there's nothing I can do about a grab. I can't tech his grab. I can jump out of it, but if I'm trying to do my own game plan, how am I going to do that, right? Like, how am I going to jump out of grabs if I'm trying to hit him? And so, yeah, it's a very interesting dichotomy for the character, where they're just a dichotomous character in general. Like they're fast and slow. They do high damage, but they don't do any damage, right? It takes them a long time to do damage, but when they do damage, it's a shitload of damage, right? In stark contrast to Milia, who does like no damage, but she is really good at hitting you. Like it's really easy for her to hit you. I can't play Milia for shit, so you just have to bear with me on Milia. But she's incredibly mobile. I mean, she's like the opposite of Potemkin, where she can jump over, jump back. She can, her normals are really fast. It's not a question of if she hits you, it's when she hits you, because she just has so many ways to do it, right? Like, I mean, she can do this into a cross up so that it hits no matter what if they're not careful. I see the closest comparison I could think of is Donkey Kong and Smash. Yeah, I mean, totally. Like, all of those characters are very much in the same category as Potemkin, right? Like King Cruel, Donkey Kong, like all of those characters do the heavyweights, Bowser, you know, they do a very similar thing to what Potemkin is trying to do, right? Get close, keep the fast people away until I'm ready to do the damage, right? Whereas Milia is like, I'm going to make you guess over and over and over again what I'm going to do. Am I going to jump over you? So like, I'm going to trip you. Now am I going to jump over you, or am I going to stay on the ground? Am I going to grab you, right? Am I going to strike low? Am I going to strike high? Am I going to go forward and then go back? Right? Like, it's just this constant state of like, you never know what the character is doing. She's just really hard to predict because she's so fast. And so that's the really cool thing about Milia, right? And she doesn't really, I mean, she has a projectile kind of, like, that's actually quite a good projectile, but it moves her forward, if you notice. Like, unlike, this is not quite a defensive projectile, right? Like, she's up in the air. This is a pretty risky move to do, unless you're a good Milia, then it doesn't matter. And then she has this, which is what's considered an Okazeme tool. I prefer fast jabby characters in games, but in some games you can't jab someone to death. Right, yeah, I mean, she's a very combo-oriented character, right? So, like, she's very famous for, like, having really long air combos. If I could do them, I would, but I can't. I don't know how to... I have no idea. Yeah, so it's stuff kind of like that, right? So like, where she's She's very much in the category of like get you up in the air because she excels in the air, right? Like that's where she wants you to be. Is she's so much better than you in the air that she wants you to be up there with her, and she'll do damn near anything to get you up there. So that's essentially how Milia works in a nutshell. She's hyper offensive. Like if Milia isn't attacking, she is fucking up. There's she doesn't have much defense. She doesn't have she doesn't have a dash back. I mean, she does have a dash back. It's obviously really shitty. I mean, look at that. It's terrible. And I guess this is kind of defensive, but it's really unsafe. Like if somebody blocks that, they could just basically walk up on you. I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, so like her entire kit is focused on offense, and getting you to guess, and making you feel like you're always making the wrong choice, right? Mix-ups, that's what they're called, mix-up characters. Speaking of mix-up characters, let's talk about the final character of today, Anji Mito, as they say in this game. I always thought his name was Anji. And let's look at his kit, his basic one. So, unfortunately, Anji is considered one of the worst characters in the game. Although that might have changed now, because the patch just came out, and they changed quite a bit about how this character works. Anji is a character that we haven't really talked about yet. I mean, we kind of did with Milia, but I would say that Milia is a little bit more hyper rush down character, whereas Anji is pure mix-up. He is purely a mix-up character. Anji or Chip? Looks so cool. Which one? I'm assuming you mean Anji. But Anji is super sick. I think Anji is awesome. He is a very cool character. And he might be a lot better now. They changed a lot about how this character works just recently. Like the problem with Anji was, okay, so in order to talk about the problems with Anji, we have to talk about what Anji wants to do. So Anji wants to do this move. He wants to do Fujin. Fujin is where he puts the two fans out in front of him. Because depending on what button you hit after Fujin, you get a different move, right? So if you do Fujin slash, he does a trip. If you do Fujin heavy, he does an overhead that bounces. If you do Fujin kick, he jumps forward, and then he can like grab out of that, right? So he can go like he can do Fujin hop grab, right? He can do Fujin. Damn it! Oh, I'm not doing the Fujin. What am I doing? Fujin trip. He can do. Let's see. What's the last one? Oh yeah. Fujin jump, right? Where he jumps out of pressure and he hits you with a air attack. So the thing that's interesting about Anji is that because you don't know which one, I mean, this is always the same. It doesn't matter which one you do after, that animation will always be the same, right? So you don't know which one he's going to do after. The problem that Anji had before was that this one was the only one that comboed. So the trip was the only one that comboed. And so what you could, everybody figured out really quickly that there's a mechanic in fighting games where you're what's called a block string. And so in a block string, you can't take your character will not do any animations unless they can. And when you're in a block string, you cannot do any animations. So you can safely hit buttons while you're in a block string because your character won't do it. It's built into the engine of the game, right? And so what Anji was trying to do was he was trying to do like this so that he could then go like this, right? So that he could get more damage off of his heavies and off of his hops. And, so he was trying to get you to go, oh shit, is he going to grab? Oh shit, is he going to trip me? Oh shit, is he going to do the overhead? But it didn't matter because you could just hit a button and you could jab him out of the other two, right? So if we were to set, no, I'm not going to do it. But if we were to set Chip to block and then do a hit after a block, he would hit me out of this. Or no, not that one. He would hit me out of that. And he would hit me out of this. Right? So it sucked because for Anji players because everybody could just nullify his one piece of kit that was awesome, right? But that's completely changed now because not only can you cancel Fujin into any of the follow-up moves, you can now cancel the Fujin animation itself. So now if everybody has to predict whether or not you're even going to do a Fujin. So you can do double mix. I mean, it's insane. And he does a shitload of damage. And so Anji, he's pretty fast. He has a great jump. Like, wow, what a great jump he has. Good air dash. I would say a really good air dash. And he has really good defense. Like, for example, so this is his normal special, which I think is gorgeous. And then he has this special, which you can't see unless I set Chip to hit me. But this is a parry special. So if somebody hits him while he's in this animation, he does another super that does a shitload of damage. This is a great defensive tool. This is probably the best defensive DP in the game. So this is exactly like Saul's and Kai's. Soul Bad Guy and Kai Kisk's DP motion, the upward motion. Except for it's easier to do because it's only a quarter circle. And the angle is just perfect. Like he can hit anybody out of the air with this. It's so good. It's such a good anti-air, right? So is this a great anti-air. So he's a good defensive character, and then when he's ready to do offense, he thrives on people not knowing what he's going to do. Because he's all about mixing you up. He's all about getting you thinking like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? And I don't know much about Anjumito and the lore. All I know is that he's like a professor type guy, but he's very quick tempered and he's very quick to rage and he's a very angry character. And so I think that's a really interesting facet of his character is like that he is so like it's unfortunate that you can't hear the game because like he's so graceful, right? Like he's like this mixture of grace and like femininity. Like he's a very what's the word I'm looking for? Like femme masculine character who plays this part very well, right? I think he's just such a cool character. God, I mean, he's just awesome. He's so graceful, right? Like his spins and his very flowy, pretty animations. But then when you do this, I mean, he's not going Fujin. He's going Fujin. Like he's very angrily shouting Fujin. I don't know what the word means, by the way, but I do know that like it's a cool dichotomy of like this character who seems like he's very effeminate, but yeah, androgynous, but he's very but when he goes into the raging type mode, it's very, very, very masculine sounding, in my opinion. Like it's still a higher pitched voice than like Potemkin, but it's very rage. It's very rage filled, and it's just something I love so much about the design of this character. Oh, he also has this butterfly. I forgot this beautiful butterfly that turns into a bird, sparrow, raven. I don't know birds, but it's a really interesting projectile because it doesn't work like Solar Kai's, right? Like first of all, it's incredibly slow, and second, it hits twice, and the second hit is basically to lock you down. So like what he wants to do is he wants to trip you and then throw the butterfly to force you to sit there because if you dash back, you're going to get hit by the butterfly. If you are just hanging out, you're going to get hit overhead with it, right? So that's kind of the whole plan for Anji, is putting you in a series of terrible questions that you don't want to answer, right? Like, oh shit, the butterfly's out. He's going to come in with Fujin. Which one is he going to do after? Is he even going to do Fujin, or is he going to cancel the Fujin into other shit, right? And also, as a final piece of the puzzle, he also has the, if I can do it, he also has the parry super, so I have to be careful if I'm even attacking him, right? So that's kind of Anji in a nutshell. I wish I knew more about like how his character, like how the narrative of his character works in terms of like actual author narrative, but I do like the dichotomy of like the flow and the anger. I wonder if there's something in the character select screen that, because they all have like a little quote under them. His graceful steps evade all attacks as he strikes. Yeah, that doesn't really capture the narrative essence of the character. Yeah, like this is quite good. A crushing pressure from his back facing stance. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. But I think that's going to do it for me. It's unfortunate that I didn't get all the characters, but maybe I'll do another breakdown of the character designs. I ended up kind of just talking a lot about how cool characters in Guilty Gear are. But I think I kind of talked to, or especially in the beginning, I talked quite a bit about how the design of these characters with very little narrative gives you a really good sense of who they are, right? Like Saul being the anger side, the aggressive side of balance, Kai being the defensive side of balance, Mei being like relentless and silly, the silly side of balance, right? Zato being like the epitome of what it would feel like to control two things at once, multitasking in a high pressure situation. We didn't talk about Giovanna. We didn't talk about my boy Gold Lewis. We'll talk about him sometime. Potemkin and the innate weirdness and struggle of grappler characters and how they're designed. Thanks for the stream plus character showcase. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, we'll talk about these characters a little bit more. I hope you go pick up the game, because I think this is the best fighting game ever made. But everybody makes fun of me when I say that. I just think it's amazing. I love it. And we can talk about some of the other mechanics too. I didn't even talk about Roman canceling or faultless defense or just defense or, like FD breaks or like I didn't talk about any of that stuff. And that's all mechanics that go far, far deeper into how Guilty Gear actually even works. The 3 different types of Roman cancel and it's a very complex, although ultimately a really approachable fighting game. I would say this game's far more approachable than like Street Fighter. It's a lot more fun, in my opinion. But yeah, so I think that's gonna do it for me. We'll talk. I'll hopefully do another stream on this soon. So yeah, this has been Vandayaga Games. Thanks for watching, and I am going to be hosting game jams every month starting in September. So head over to the vandayaha.itch.io page. You can just Google search Vandayaha itch and it'll be there. Or you can go to the Discord and all the links are there. There's links underneath this stream. There's links to the YouTube where all the links are posted. There's links all over. I got links in the links. I got links on top of the links, painted on the links. There's links in the links. It's crazy. There's so many links. The character seems a lot more unique and conventional. Anji, you mean, or Potemkin? Oh, thank you for linking that. Yeah, Vandayaha Games, vandayaha-games.itch.io. And we're going to be hosting a game jam every month. It's going to be narrative focused. And if you come to the Discord, there's a write-up where I explain how to make a better version of your, how to write better, right? How to write better fiction, how to construct better fiction, how to be a better storyteller. There's a whole guide in there in the Discord. And you can follow the links below the stream to get to that, right? And so I hope that you're willing to come over to the Discord and hang out, because we're doing stuff there all the time. We're always talking about game narrative. We're always talking about game just design in general and coding and pixel art dailies um, yeah. And so the more people we have, the better this will get, because the more people we have to sit down and talk about how to be better storytellers with games. Because in my opinion, games are the next storytelling medium. They are the next great storytelling medium, and it just takes the right people to talk about it enough and to figure it out enough that we start actually making legitimate strides in game narrative, right? Um, and that's what Vanda Yaha is all about. So until next Thursday, I streamed on Friday this week because I unfortunately had to go do something that I could not avoid yesterday. But I hope that you'll come back next week, next Thursday, and catch a stream. Come to the Discord, sign up for the game jam, do all that stuff. And yeah, so we'll call it a stream there. Thank you, everybody. Wow, my voice is getting shot. Shit. All right, bye-bye. See you later, Two Links.